In January 2024, a security researcher found something sitting in the open on the internet, an unsecure database, 12 terabytes in size containing 26 billion individual records. No hack was needed to find it. It was simply left accessible, the digital equivalent of an unlocked warehouse. Researchers called it the mother of all breaches. It held the record for the largest data exposure in history. It didn't hold that record for long. It's important to understand what this actually was, because 26 million records sounds like one catastrophic bag hack, and it wasn't. It was a compilation. 3,876 separate folders, each corresponding to a previous individual breach, aggregated and re-indexed into a single searchable dataset. Tencent QQ contributed 1.4 billion records, Weibo 504 million, MySpace 360 million, Twitter linked Adobe and thousands of smaller organizations rounded out the rest. Security researchers estimated that roughly 1.6 billion of those records had never been published before, meaning this wasn't purely old news repackaged, it contained genuinely new exposure too. Barely a year later, a new record emerged, what security researchers now call by the 2025 credential crisis exposed approximately 16 billion credentials, a single collection event distinct from the MOAB compilation. Unlike MOAB, which aggregated all breach data, this collection was overwhelmingly composed of credentials actively harvested by infostealer malware directly from personal and employee devices, meaning it represented currently actively exploitable access, not historical residue. This distinction matters more than the raw number. A traditional data breach is a single company's database getting compromised, bad but bounded, and the company can eventually notify affected users. Infostealer malware works differently. It sits quietly on an infected device, harvesting every password, cookie, and saved credential as you use them across every site and service you touch, with no single company able to detect or disclose the exposure because it never happened on their systems at all. This is a fundamentally more distributed, and disrupting more current and more silent threat model than the mega breaches that made headlines a decade ago. Exposed credentials at this scale feed directly into two of the most common categories of ongoing fraud: credential stuffing, automated tools testing your leaked username password combination against hundreds of other services, betting that you reused it, remains highly effective, especially because password reuse is still the norm rather than the exception. A targeted phishing becomes dramatically more convincing when an attacker already has real, specific details about you, your actual accounts, your actual purchase history, to reference in a fraudulent message. It's worth understanding the sheer diversity buried inside a compilation like this, because it illustrates how comprehensively an average internet user's digital life is represented. Beyond the headline, tech platforms, the MOAB dataset included records from government organizations across the United States, Brazil, Germany, and Philippines, and Turkey. This wasn't confined to consumer social media accounts. It spanned professional, government, and financial contexts simultaneously, meaning a single individual could easily appear across multiple seemingly unrelated folders within the same compilation, each contributing a different fragment of that digital identity to a single searchable device profile. A natural confronting And a natural comforting assumption is that old, previously breached data poses limited ongoing risk. Surely most people have changed those passwords by now. Security researchers directly challenge this assumption. Password reuse remains extremely common, meaning a credential breached years ago against one long forgotten service often still works today against an entirely different currently active account. Compilation like MOAP, MOAB specifically increase risk not by containing new information, but by making previously scattered, individually low value fragments of data instantly cross referenceable. A piece of information from a 2016 breach becomes far more dangerous when it can be automatically matched against the 2024 breach of a different service, reconstructing a far more complete profile than either breach alone ever exposed. The practical response, thankfully, hasn't changed, even as the scale has grown almost incomprehensible. Unique passwords for every account managed through a password manager rather than memory eliminate the single biggest amplifying factor, credential reuse. That turns out one breach into dozens of compromised accounts. Multi-factor authentication renders a stolen password alone insufficient for account access in the large majority of cases. Periodically checking your own exposure through a reputable breach notification service turns an abstract, overwhelming statistic into a specific actionable list of which your own accounts actually need attention. 26 billion, then 16 billion. The numbers involved in modern data breaches have grown so large they have stopped feeling like they describe individual people at all. But every one of those records traces back to an actual account, an actual person, an actual moment of exposure. The scale is genuinely new. The defense against it, fortunately, is not. Thank you so much for your presence. I'm looking forward to see you in the next video. Don't forget to share your thoughts, your comments, your reflections. And if you have any questions, remarks, or feedback, feel free to leave them in, in the comment section and I will respond to them as soon as I see them. Thanks once again for your presence.